Hi everybody, welcome back to the next in my series of DayZ server modding for consoles, and in this video we're going to talk about and we're going to look at the infected, the zombies. How do you turn them off, and how can you change the numbers, increasing them or more likely decreasing them. Actually, lots of people quite like putting in hordes of zombies. So here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to be diving into the XMLs, and the XMLs we're going to be looking at are events.xml, globals.xml, and zombie territories.xml. So first off, let's talk about turning zombies completely off, and we can do that in the globals.xml file. So if you go over to your Nitrado web interface for your server, and then you want to go to the file browser, and you'll end up here. Then you want to go into the missions folder. Then if it's a Chernarus folder, you'll want to go into the Chernarus mission. If it's a Livonia folder, you want to go into the Enoch mission. I'm going to click on that one, and then we want to go through to the DB directory, and then we want to go to the globals, we said, didn't we? Yeah, globals.xml. So you can click on this little link here and download it. And what we recommend you do is you copy the file from your downloads folder into another working folder and edit on that version, so that if you've got any problems you can always re-upload it. You can edit it straight in the web browser here, but if you make it can be easy to make mistakes, so try and avoid that if you can. Also, really, if you're doing any edits live, you want to really stop the server as well. So let's have a look at the globals.xml file. Now it has lots of other really interesting stuff in, but don't mess around with it now. What we're interested in is this line down here. Variable name equals zombie max count. Value equals 1000. So this is literally saying on your server you can have a maximum number of any one time of 1,000 zombies. Now that doesn't mean you can have 1,000 zombies in the same place. But imagine if you had like a server with 60 players on it, and they were all in different towns. They could all have, a fair number of zombies spawning near them. So what we want to do is, if we want to get rid of them, we want to change this value to 0 here. Now there's no point making it lower and say put in like 10 it. I suppose you could put in like 10 and they would be very rare, but we're going to change the number of zombies in particular places using a different method. Now what I recommend you do whenever you're going to do any edits like this, copy the line and then put in a remark argument. So you go left angle bracket exclamation mark dash dash, and then we paste in that. And now what we've done is we've put in a comment there. So the game ignores this comment in green that you can see, but it means we've got a backup of what we've done, so that when we go into here and we change that to 0, and then we save that, and then we re-upload it to our server and we restart our server, there'll be no zombies. But when we want to go back, all we need to do is copy that and paste it into there. And I would always recommend, where you can, do that sort of thing. Just remember, you can't nest comments or remarks inside other remarks. It doesn't work that way. But that's kind of a good way of doing it. So by changing the value of zombie max count to 0, that completely gets rid of the zombies. Right, let's change that back though, because I don't want to completely get rid of them. So next, let's look at changing the number of zombies you might get in particular places. And this is where the events.xml file can get a little bit confusing. So if we do a search for infected, because they're actually not zombies, are they? They're infected. So the first one we get to is this event called infected army. Here we go. Now it's important to know that within the events.xml file, all the events aren't treated the same way by the game. The prefix of the event, this bit here, changes how the game treats the event. So infected event, so the infected army event, is treated differently by the game to the ambient hen event, or the animal bear event, or the let's go down to the vehicles. Where are the vehicles? Or the vehicle events. Okay, so that prefix there, for example, for this vehicle says to the DayZ server.exe, the program that's running your server, it says this is a vehicle event. Treat the values and the instructions within the event as it is a vehicle. And that's really important to remember that, because sometimes we you can kind of get stuck in thinking, well, wait a minute, all the events are the same. You know, a hen event is the same as a zombie event, and it's not. They're all treated differently, and that is why the numbers don't make sense when you first look at them. Because you'll compare like a infected army event with a vehicle event, and you think, well, that's how the vehicle spawns work with that event. Why don't they work the same for the infected? And that's because the game treats them differently. Also, if you ever want to make any custom events, it's very important that you stay within the way that the game describes events. So if you want to make a custom infected, a custom zombie event, it must start with infected, so the game knows, look, we're going to be spawning in some zombies here. So as you can see, we've got infected army, and it says nominal 50, min 25, max 250, and then you've got safe radius, distance radius, cleanup radius, and then down here we've got the children of the event. So what basically this is saying, when an event pops, when it fires, when it is triggered by a player being nearby, then look at these values and then do something about it. But as you can see already, these figures don't really make sense, do they? Because you know that when you're wandering around, say, a military location, you don't come across 30 zombies all at the same time. It tends to be a handful of zombies, doesn't it? And that's because the actual number of zombies that you will come across when you come across a zombie event, and remember, you come across zombie events all the time, don't you? As soon as you go into an infected area, you know, well, any town or area within the DayZ map of Transylvania, there will be zombies there. There just always is. The only time you don't get zombies, don't get infected, is when you're a fresh spawn. Say you've sorry, not a fresh spawn. Say you've logged out in a town or a village, and you log back in. If there's no other players in that town or village, there won't be any zombies there until you start moving around, because they will only trigger when you get to a certain distance from them, and then they spawn in. It's so that you don't see zombies spawning in front of you or disappearing in front of you. Now, the actual number of infected or zombies that spawn in is actually controlled by the zombies territories.xml. So if we go back to our file here, so the events.xml is in the same one that the globals was. But if we go up, let's go back up in our server in the file tree. If you go into the env directory and you go down to the bottom, you've got zombie territories.xml. So download that file. And we wanted to look at the infected army, didn't we? So if we do a control F, search for army. Right. So here we go. So here we've got the infected army events. So the zombie territories XML tells the game where zombies should be spawning in, or infected should be spawning in, but importantly, it tells the game how many to spawn in as well in each particular place. So this is different. You know, when you were spawning in, say, vehicles, you would say, look, I want, say, 30 events, and then you would go down to the children and you would put in say you wanted 10 blue vehicles, 10 red vehicles, 10 white vehicles, and the game would then spawn in those vehicles across the map at their particular spawn points, but only one at a time. That's because if you look at the vehicle spawn points, they don't include these. So what we have here, so if we take this line here, let's take this line here. So at the infected army event that triggers at 620 by 13648, so when you get close to that particular coordinates, this infected army event will trigger. And what it will spawn in is a minimum, a D-min of 5 infected armies, and a maximum of 8. So what these numbers mean is you have stat. Now, I might not be completely right with these, but bear with me. You'll get close enough. So you have static min and static max, and dynamic min and dynamic max. I think what that means is dynamic events are ones that are only triggered by a player approaching, and I think static ones are kind of going on all of the time, no matter what's happening. Now, I could be wrong on that, but bear with me. But in essence, what you need to do is, if you want to change the number of zombies that happen at this particular event that fires there, then you need to change the dmin and the dmax in this particular line. So what we could do is actually, if we copy those coordinates there, and then we go to iSurvive, there we go, let's go here, and then we paste those in. Where are those? Let's zoom in. Okay, filter, all loot is there. So for some reason these zombies spawn in right there. Don't know why. In fact, what sort of building? Contaminated area, random. Oh, it's at this radar station, so it's a military place, so that makes sense, doesn't it? So you've got zombies spawning there. So if we wanted to change the number there, we would change the dmin, so we could take it down. So we could say the dmin was 2 and the dmax was 2. That means that when you approach that particular area, only 2 zombies would spawn in. Or we could put 15 dmin and 20 max, and between 15 or 20 zombies would spawn in. Now, be very careful with creating zombie hordes like that, because especially on console, they're not great at dealing with lots and lots of infected wandering around. The way that I understand that DayZ works with the zombies is that as you're approaching a bunch of zombies, or AI basically, the server's kind of controlling what they're doing. But when you get closer and the zombies are kind of within your range and they start interacting with you, maybe they're aggroing, start to run after you, I think that then starts to become controlled by your local console version of DayZ. And so if there's too many zombies, the frame rate will really start to chug and start to slow down. So don't go crazy. And remember, even 3 zombies are dangerous. 10 zombies attacking you is very, very dangerous indeed. And that's how you control it. You simply change the smin, smax, and the dmin and dmax of the number of zombies in a particular line, in a particular area, and that means you can increase or decrease them. And it's a little bit of a laborious task, but if you use find and replace, you can do stuff fairly fast. So for example, let's say I wanted to change these. So what you could do, say if you wanted to change this line to, I don't know, 20, what you could do is, if you do find and replace, so you do Control F and do find and replace, so find dmin equals 9 and dmax equals 13, and we change that to say 15 and 20, like so. What you could then do is you could then highlight a whole load of this, and then you could say replace all. Now there's only one, but then what that's doing, it's looking for all of those instances and replacing it with that. And that's basically what you do. And you can go through and you do a few lines, and all of a sudden they'll all start to change. So there we go. Now I would highly recommend, if you would like a more friendly server, to decrease the number of zombies. I think there's too many infected in vanilla DayZ that make the game a little bit frustrating, especially even when you're geared up and you've got lots of gear. There's always a chance that you'll end up standing on top of a car shooting the heads of zombies as they're all hanging around the bottom of the car, or you're on top of a wall or something like that. I think DayZ is great with less zombies, because they're still a threat, but you don't need quite as many, so you can go through and do that. So there we go. So hopefully that's helpful. As you can see, there's lots of different types of zombies. There's loads of different values, because you've got to have a different coordinate with the different dmin and dmax for every single instance of infected spawning in. And always remember, once you've done it, once you've done your file, please make sure you go over to the XML validator and validate the file, so you can make sure you haven't made any mistakes. Right, well, that's enough from me. Hopefully you found that useful. If you have it, if you've got any other questions, put them in the comments section down below, and I will see you again soon.